Um, Rex Heuermann. I'm an architect. I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
Okay. All
Been
right.
working in Manhattan since 1987.
Four women wrapped in burlap, dumped along a beach, found by accident. The cops had a witness, a vehicle description, and phone records that could have ended this in weeks. Instead, a serial killer walked free for 13 years. And when they finally caught him, it was because of a pizza crust. Stay with me on this one. Before they were case numbers, before they were headlines, before their names were stitched into the worst kind of history, they were someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's friend, and every single one of them deserved better than the ending they got. Let's start with Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25 years old, a mother of two from Norwich, Connecticut. She worked seasonal jobs, telemarketing mostly, and she was doing everything she could to keep a roof over her kids' heads. But the work dried up. The bills didn't. And then the eviction notice came. So Maureen did what she felt she had to do. She turned to Craigslist. She started offering escort services because she couldn't figure out another way to pay her mortgage. She'd actually left the industry for 7 months. 7 months of trying to build something clean. Something stable. But poverty doesn't wait for you to find your footing. On July 9, 2007, Maureen told someone she was heading to New York City for the day. That was the last time anyone heard her voice. Then there's Melissa Barthelemy, 24, originally from Buffalo, New York, living in the Bronx. Petite, 4'10", barely 95 pounds. She told people she was going to see a client on Long Island. She never came home. But here's the thing about Melissa's case that separates it from the others. Her phone didn't go silent. Weeks after she vanished, someone started using it. Making calls. Not to friends. Not to family. To her 15-year-old sister. We'll come back to that. Trust me, you're not ready for what those calls contained. Megan Waterman, 22, from Scarborough, Maine. A young woman caught in the machinery of sex trafficking. She was staying at a motel in Hauppauge, New York, placing ads on Craigslist. On June 6, 2010, she told her boyfriend she was going out and would call him later. She never called. She never came back. Megan wasn't choosing this life. This life had chosen her. And it led her straight to a killer's doorstep. Amber Lynn Costello, 27, born in Charlotte, raised in Wilmington, North Carolina. Amber had been a strong student as a kid, bright, capable. But she was sexually assaulted by a neighbor when she was just 6 years old. 6. That trauma cracked something open inside her that never fully healed. By her teens, she was addicted to drugs. By her 20s, she was living in West Babylon, Long Island, in a house full of other addicts. On September 2, 2010, a stranger called her multiple times. Offered her $2,500. She walked out the door to meet him. Her roommate watched her leave. He saw the vehicle. A big man behind the wheel. Driving a first-generation Chevy Avalanche. Amber was 4'11", roughly 100 pounds. She didn't stand a chance. 4 women. All petite. All Caucasian. All in their 20s. All advertising on Craigslist. All desperate. All vulnerable. And that's the part of this that burns the most, because whoever was hunting these women knew exactly who to target. He picked women the system had already failed. Women living on the margins. Women who wouldn't be immediately missed. Women whose disappearances might not even make the news. And he was right. For years, they didn't. But the story doesn't end with 4. Because this predator didn't start in 2007. Not even close. Sandra Costilla, 28, from Trinidad and Tobago, was killed back in 1993. Her body was found by hunters in a wooded area on Long Island with sharp force injuries across her body. Jessica Taylor, 20, a sex worker from Manhattan, vanished in 2003. She was decapitated, dismembered. Parts of her found in Manorville. Her head and hands wouldn't be recovered until 8 years later, near Gilgo Beach. And Valerie Mack, 24, a mother from Philadelphia, disappeared around the year 2000. Her torso turned up in Manorville. The rest of her surfaced in 2011. 7 women, spanning over a decade, scattered across Long Island in pieces and in burlap. And somewhere in a quiet suburb, the man responsible was waking up every morning, putting on a suit, and catching the train to work in Manhattan like every other commuter. The scariest monsters don't look like monsters. They look like your neighbor, your co-worker, the guy ahead of you in line at the pizza shop. And for 13 years, no one had a clue. But someone should have. Because the clues were there. Buried in police files. Ignored. Overlooked. Collecting dust while the bodies collected along Ocean Parkway. If these women's stories are already pulling you in, hit subscribe right now. Because what comes next, the crime scenes, the evidence, and the calls that haunted a teenage girl for years, it only gets darker from here. December 11th, 2010. A K-9 unit is pushing through the dense brush along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, Long Island. The dogs are working hard. The handlers are focused. But here's the thing, they're not looking for a body. They're looking for Shannon Gilbert, a 23-year-old escort who vanished 7 months earlier after running from a client's house in a panic. They're hoping to find a trail. Maybe personal belongings. Maybe a sign she wandered into the marshland. What the dogs find instead changes everything. A body. Wrapped in burlap. Bound. Discarded in the undergrowth just yards off the highway. Not Shannon Gilbert. Someone else entirely. 2 days later, December 13th, 3 more sets of remains are found. Same stretch of road. Same burlap. Same method. 4 women. Lined up within a mile of each other, along a desolate strip of beach highway like some kind of grotesque collection. Think about that. 4 bodies. A mile apart. Wrapped identically. Placed deliberately. This wasn't chaos. This was ritual. This was someone who had done this before and had every intention of doing it again. The victims are identified as Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello. The press calls them the Gilgo Four. Suffolk County authorities hold a press conference and confirm what everyone already fears. These killings are likely the work of a single individual. A serial killer. Operating on Long Island. Possibly for years. Let's walk the scenes. Because the details matter. All 4 women are found bound, restrained with leather belts, tape, or both. Brainerd Barnes is found with 3 leather belts securing her body. All 4 are wrapped in burlap sacking, the kind you'd find in a hardware store or a garden supply shop. Not plastic. Not sheets. Burlap. Coarse. Rough. Deliberate. The wrapping is consistent. Almost uniform. Like packaging. This killer wasn't panicking. He was methodical. Organized. He had a system. Now think about where they were found. Ocean Parkway runs along the South Shore barrier islands of Long Island. It's flat. Sparse. Shrubby terrain on both sides. At night, it's pitch black. Almost no traffic. No streetlights. No cameras. If you wanted to pull over, drag something into the brush, and disappear into the darkness, this is where you'd do it. And this killer knew that. He knew the terrain. He knew the timing. He knew exactly how dark and empty that road gets after sundown. But here's where the case splits into something stranger. In the spring of 2011, just months after the Gilgo Four are found, investigators expand their search along Ocean Parkway. And they find more remains. 6 more sets. Scattered further along the beach. Among them, Jessica Taylor's skull, hands, and forearm. Remember, her torso had been found 8 years earlier in Manaville, 40 miles away. And Valerie Mack's remains, also partially recovered in Manaville back in 2000. Their heads and hands had been separated from their bodies and dumped here at Gilgo Beach years later. The Gilgo Four were left whole, wrapped and bound but intact. Taylor and Mack were dismembered, decapitated, hands removed. Investigators find similarities in the cutting instruments used on both women and in the garbage bags containing their remains. This tells us something deeply unsettling. This killer was evolving. In the early years, 2000, 2003, he cut the bodies apart. Maybe to obscure identification. Maybe because the act itself meant something to him. But by 2007, 2009, 2010, he stopped dismembering. He wrapped them whole. Same burlap. Same belts. But no cutting. As if he'd refined the process. Become more efficient. More confident. Like a predator perfecting a method. And then there are the phone calls. After Melissa Barthelemy vanished in July 2009, her killer used her personal cell phone to call her 15-year-old sister Amanda. Multiple times. The voice on the line was calm, controlled, monotone. A middle-aged man with a Long Island accent. At first, he taunted Amanda, asked if she knew what her sister really did. Then the calls escalated. Became sexually explicit. Became cruel. Until finally, in the last call, he told a child that her sister was dead. And that he would watch her rot. Those calls pinged off cell towers in Midtown Manhattan and in Massapequa, Long Island. 2 locations. 2 anchor points. And for 13 years, no one connected them to the man living right there in between. Someone watched these women disappear. Someone wrapped them in burlap in a house, loaded them into a vehicle, drove to the darkest stretch of road on Long Island, and placed them in the brush with the calm precision of someone taking out the trash. And then he went home, probably showered, probably went to bed, and woke up the next morning and went to work. That's not just a crime. That's a performance. A ritual. A pattern driven by something so dark, most people can't even process it. And the scariest part? The clues that would eventually expose him were already sitting in a police file. Waiting. For over a decade. If you're watching this and your gut is already turning, drop a comment below. Tell me what you think so far. And share this with someone who needs to hear this story, because the investigation that follows is one of the biggest law enforcement failures in modern American history. Here's the part that should make you angry. Because the Gilgo Beach killer didn't outsmart the police. He didn't use some genius-level counterforensic strategy. He didn't disappear into the shadows like a ghost. The truth is far worse. The evidence was there. Almost from the beginning. And the system, the people sworn to protect and serve, let it collect dust for over a decade. Let's rewind to 2010. Amber Costello's roommate, Dave Schaller, talks to the police shortly after she vanishes. He tells them about the client who picked Amber up that night. Describes him as a large, built man. Tells them the vehicle, a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche. That description goes into the file. And that file goes into a drawer. And that drawer stays shut for 12 years. Think about that. A witness. A vehicle description. A starting point. And nothing happened. Meanwhile, the phone calls to Melissa Barthelemy sister are traced. Cell tower pings place the caller in Midtown Manhattan and Massapequa.
Looks like it's like a
Investigators
trash bag
know they're looking for a middle-aged white male
that they got.
familiar with the south shore of Long Island, probably
sort of
with
pole,
access to burlap.
stick.
That profile
It's like a
fits
stick they
maybe
got.
tens of thousands of people. But combined with the vehicle, the
A
phone
box in his
data,
hand.
and the geography, it should have been enough to narrow the field dramatically. But Suffolk County was in chaos. There were allegations of corruption within the police department, internal politics, leadership turnover. The case became a revolving door of detectives and task forces, each inheriting a mess from the one before. Leads went cold not because they didn't exist, but because no one followed them far enough. For 13 years, the families of these women waited, pleaded, held press conferences, begged for answers, and got silence. Then, in January 2022, something finally shifts. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison and District Attorney Ray Tierney form a brand new task force. Fresh eyes, no baggage, no politics, and within 6 weeks, they identify a suspect. 6 weeks. After 13 years of nothing. Let that contrast burn into your mind. The break starts with the Chevy Avalanche. The new task force pulls Schaller's old statement out of the file and runs it against vehicle registration databases. First-generation Avalanche. Registered in the Massapequa area. It leads them to one name, Rex Heuermann. That's the thread. And once they pull it, the whole thing unravels fast. They dig into Heuermann's cell phone records. His personal phone, not a burner, places him in the same locations, at the same times, as the burner phones used to contact the victims. Massapequa Park. Midtown Manhattan. The exact zones where those taunting calls to Amanda Barthelemy originated. The overlap isn't coincidental. It's damning. But they don't stop there. They start watching him. Surveillance. And what they observe is chilling. In 2022, more than a decade after the murders, Heuermann is still using burner phones. They watch him walk into a cell phone store in Midtown Manhattan and load money onto a prepaid burner account. He's still operating. Still covering his tracks. Still, presumably, hunting. Then comes January 2023. Investigators tail Heuermann through Manhattan. He stops for pizza, eats, throws the crust into a public garbage can, and the moment he walks away, they grab it. A pizza crust. That's all it takes. The DNA on that crust matches a hair found embedded in the burlap wrapped around Megan Waterman's body. The match exists in only 0.04% of the population. It's him. But investigators aren't done. They go to Heuermann's home in Massapequa Park and pull bottles from the household trash outside. They extract DNA. And the results are staggering. Hair found on or near 3 of the victims matches Heuermann's wife, Asa Ellerup. On a belt used to bind Maureen Brainerd Barnes, wrapped around her legs, ankles, and feet, a single female hair is lodged in the buckle. The odds of that hair not belonging to Ellerup or their daughter Victoria are 8 trillion to 1. His family's DNA is woven into the crime scenes. Not because they participated, but because the materials came from inside that house. The burlap, the belts, the tape. He was using household items to package human beings. July 13, 2023. Rex Heuermann steps out of his Midtown Manhattan office. Law enforcement surrounds him. He looks up and says 4 words. What is this about? Then, it's a mistake. He's arrested. Charged with 3 counts of murder. Held without bail. His wife files for divorce within a week. And back in Massapequa Park, investigators spend 12 days tearing his house apart. What they find inside is a nightmare library of obsession. Over 350 electronic devices. Guns in the basement. Thousands of searches for violent pornography. Images of bruised and impaled women. Over 100 searches about serial killers. And searches about the Gilgo Beach case itself. He was monitoring the investigation. Watching the watchers. Studying his own case like a student reviewing his coursework. But the most disturbing artifact they pull from those devices is a document. A planning document. Created in 2000, the same year Valerie Mack was killed. It's a checklist. A how-to guide for disposing of a human body. Instructions to wash the body inside all cavities. Remove identifying marks. Remove the head and hands. It even references the book Mindhunter, the FBI's own playbook for understanding serial predators. He didn't just kill these women. He studied how to get away with it. And for a very long time, he did. If this investigation is making your jaw drop, hit that like button and subscribe to Hidden Verdict. Because the man behind all this? You'd never pick him out of a crowd. And that's exactly what made him so dangerous. Here's what makes Rex Heuermann terrifying. Not the violence. Not the planning. Not even the body count. It's the mask. The perfectly ordinary, completely unremarkable mask he wore every single day for over 30 years. He lived in Massapequa Park. A quiet, suburban, middle-class village on Long Island. Tree-lined streets. Family homes. Neighborhood barbecues. The kind of place where people wave at each other on the way to the mailbox. And right there, in the middle of all that normalcy, Rex Heuermann raised a family, ran a business, paid a mortgage, and allegedly killed at least 7 women. His neighbors described him as well-dressed, professional, a commuter. He caught the train to Manhattan like thousands of other Long Islanders. He wore a suit, carried a briefcase, worked as an architectural consultant, running his own firm, RH Consultants and Associates, since 1994. His clients weren't shady. They were major brands. Target, Foot Locker, American Airlines, Catholic charities. In a YouTube interview from early 2022, just months before investigators identified him, he sat in front of the camera and called himself a troubleshooter. Calm, articulate, unremarkable. The kind of man you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. But behind that mask, investigators say, was a sexual sadist who spent decades hunting vulnerable women. Let's go back to the beginning. Rex Andrew Heuermann. Born September 13, 1963. Grew up in the same town where he'd eventually be arrested. Attended Berner High School, same class as actor Billy Baldwin. But Rex wasn't popular. He wasn't well-liked. A childhood friend named John Parisi remembered meeting him in 1st or 2nd grade and described him as a loner. Almost no friends. And the other kids were cruel. Another classmate told the New York Times he got picked on a lot. Now, this is not an excuse. It's not a justification. But it's a pattern that criminal psychologists see over and over. Isolation, humiliation, and social rejection in childhood becoming a breeding ground for rage that festers for years, sometimes decades, before it finds an outlet. And the outlet Heuermann allegedly found was control. Total, absolute control over women who had none. After high school, Heuermann worked as a seasonal employee at Jones Beach from 1981 to 84. His job was to drive an all-terrain vehicle along the beach after closing, making sure everyone had left. That role gave him something invaluable, intimate knowledge of Ocean Parkway at night. The darkness, the isolation, the access points, the exact stretch of road where, years later, 6 of his alleged victims would be found. He married twice. His second wife, Asa Ellerup, was born in Iceland. They had a daughter and she had a son from a previous relationship. And here's the detail that prosecutors lean on hard. Every summer, Ellerup would take the children to Iceland to visit her family. Extended trips. weeks at a time. And prosecutors say that's when Heuermann operated. When his family was overseas, he had the house to himself. No witnesses. No interruptions. No one to question the burlap, the belts, the late-night drives along Ocean Parkway. Prosecutors say he was given unfettered time to execute his plans for each victim without any fear that his family would uncover his involvement. He wasn't just waiting for opportunity. He was scheduling around it. And the double life ran deep. While presenting as a successful professional, Heuermann owed over $425,000 in unpaid taxes going back to 2005. 6 IRS liens between 2010 and 21. His house, the same house where investigators found guns, planning documents, and hundreds of electronic devices, was described by a neighbor as a dump. Polished on the outside, rotting on the inside. The house was a mirror of the man. His co-workers saw glimpses. Mary Schell and Muriel Enriquez, who worked with him, said they never suspected anything this extreme. But Schell spoke to former female employees who said Heuermann wasn't always respectful. He'd make comments about women's bodies. He'd assign them to clean the office toilet. Small things. Power moves. The kind of behavior that most people brush off but that behavioral analysts recognize as dominant signaling. A need to assert control in every space he occupied. And then there's the family fracture. Within days of his arrest, his wife filed for divorce. She has since publicly stated she does not believe Heuermann is capable of these crimes. But their daughter, Victoria, has said the opposite. She believes her father is guilty. One household. Two completely different realities. One woman who shared a bed with this man for years and refuses to accept what the evidence suggests. And one young woman who looked at the same evidence and said, "That's him." That divide, that psychological fault line running through a single family, tells you everything about the power of denial, the weight of cognitive dissonance, and how deeply a mask can embed itself into the lives of the people closest to the monster wearing it. Rex Heuermann sat in that house for decades. He commuted. He consulted. He filed taxes, late, but he filed them. He walked his neighborhood. And according to prosecutors, he killed 7 women, wrapped them in materials from his own home, drove them to a beach he'd known since his 20s, and buried them in the brush. Then he went home. And he did it again. If this story is getting under your skin, drop a comment. Tell me, do you think someone in his life had to have known? And make sure you're subscribed to Hidden Verdict, because what comes next is where the case stands right now. And there are still questions that no one can answer. As of right now, March 2026, Rex Heuermann has not been convicted of anything. He sits in protective solitary confinement, 23 hours a day, awaiting a trial that the judge says will begin after Labor Day this year. He maintains his innocence. His attorney says there will be no plea deal. No negotiation. He wants his day in court. And honestly, this trial might be one of the most significant criminal proceedings in modern American history. Heuermann faces 7 counts of murder. Sandra Costilla, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello. In September 2025, a judge ruled that all 7 cases will be tried together. That means one jury will hear the full scope of what prosecutors say is a 30-year killing spree. And that same judge made another critical ruling. Advanced DNA evidence, the kind that linked Heuermann through hair and familial matches, will be admissible. It's the first time this type of DNA analysis has been admitted in a New York State trial. But the defense isn't going quietly. In January 2026, Heuermann's attorneys filed a 178-page omnibus motion challenging nearly everything. 20 search warrants. The DNA methodology. The witness identifications. Even the pizza crust. And their argument about the pizza crust is fascinating in a legal sense. They're claiming that when a person throws away a physical object, like a pizza crust, they are not consenting to the abandonment of their genetic information. That the DNA inside that crust is still constitutionally protected, even after it's in a public garbage can. That argument has never been tested at this level. If the judge agrees, the cornerstone of the prosecution's case could collapse. They're also challenging a key witness identification. Evidence shows that hours before Heuermann's arraignment in July 2023, a witness received a text message from a civilian, not law enforcement, asking if Heuermann's mugshot, which was already circulating in the media, was the guy you saw years ago. The defense says that's textbook suggestive identification. Tainted, unreliable, inadmissible. And then there's the Sandra Costilla charge, the oldest case, dating back to 1993. The defense argues the only physical link between Heuermann and Costilla is a single hair found on her shirt. No eyewitnesses. No surveillance. No digital evidence. No phone records. No fingerprints. No confession. No murder weapon. Just one hair. They want that charge dismissed entirely. On March 3, 2026, prosecutors fired back with their own 122-page response. And what they revealed was explosive. They disclosed that in the 2 years before his arrest, Heuermann allegedly used burner phones to contact dozens of sex workers more than 500 times. He created fake profiles on Tinder using the names Andrew Roberts and Thomas Hawk. He searched the internet for violent pornography, images of bruised and impaled women. He made over 100 searches related to serial killers, including searches about his own case. Prosecutors called him what behavioral analysts had likely suspected for years, a sexual sadist. The next hearing is March 17. The judge is expected to rule on the defense motions and potentially lock in a final trial date. But even as the legal machinery grinds forward, there are questions that may never be answered. Are there more victims? A law enforcement official pointed out that serial killers rarely begin in their 40s. If Heuermann killed Sandra Costilla in 93, what was he doing in the 80s? Were there others before her, in places no one has thought to look? What about Shannon Gilbert, the woman whose disappearance triggered the entire discovery? Her death was ruled an accidental drowning. Her family has always believed she was murdered. No charges have been filed against Heuermann in her case. Her story remains unresolved. The woman who inadvertently exposed a serial killer and still hasn't gotten her own justice. And who is Asian Doe? Remains found in 2011. Believed to have died in 2006 or earlier. Originally identified as male but now believed to have presented as female, found in women's clothing. Of Chinese descent. Between 17 and 23 years old. No name. No family has come forward. Investigators are using the same genetic genealogy that caught Heuermann, but as of today, this person remains unknown. Unclaimed. A ghost at the edge of a case full of ghosts. And then there's the twist no one saw coming. In December 2025, a completely separate suspect, Andrew Dykes, a 66-year-old former Florida state trooper, was arrested for the murder of Tanya Denise Jackson, the woman known for decades only as Peaches, whose dismembered remains were found near Gilgo Beach in the late 90s. DNA confirmed Dykes was the father of her infant daughter, found nearby. There is no known connection between Dykes and Heuermann, which means Gilgo Beach was not one killer's dumping ground. It was at least two. And the defense knows exactly how to use that, to argue that law enforcement pinned everything on Heuermann while the truth is far more complicated. So here we are. 7 murder charges. A trial approaching. A mountain of DNA evidence that the defense calls unreliable. A suspect who says he's innocent. A family torn in half. A wife who says he couldn't have done it. A daughter who says he did. And a stretch of beach on Long Island that has held its secrets for over 3 decades. Some of those secrets have been pulled from the sand. Others are still buried. This is the Gilgo Beach case. And the verdict, the real verdict, is still hidden. If this case has stayed with you, do me a favor. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this story. And subscribe to Hidden Verdict, because we don't just cover true crime. We dig into the cracks the system doesn't want you to see. Hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next.